They called it a celebration, I called it a setup. My dad hosted a family dinner at our house in Denton, Texas, to honor my little sister, Haley. She'd just been promoted to first lieutenant. Top of her class. First in her unit. The golden child, everyone was there. Family, friends, even neighbors who barely knew her but came for the wine and the free food. The living room had a projector looping boot camp photos like it was a recruitment commercial. Haley saluting, Haley on a rope course, Haley in full camo, not a single photo of me. I wore black slacks, a plain gray blouse, tied my hair back. Nothing flashy. I wasn't trying to compete with the slideshow, but judging by the way people looked at me, just showing up had already offended half the room. My dad, retired Colonel Frank Callahan, still barked at the thermostat like he was running a base. He gave me a nod. No hug. Not even a real hello. So, he said, his eyes already back on the projector, what exactly are you doing these days? I opened my mouth to answer, but didn't get the chance. She's between things, my Aunt Brenda cut in, like she was saving him from the discomfort of remembering I existed. I smiled, small, dry. I'm better at not explaining things now. Nobody laughed. Someone needed more forks. Someone else needed water. Guess who they turned to? Me. Nobody asked if I minded. They just assumed. Like always, I grabbed a stack of forks and headed for the kitchen. I was refilling a pitcher when I heard Haley's voice echoing down the hall. She was telling a story about her commanding officer calling her a natural-born leader. People clapped. When I came back, all the seats were full. Every place card was filled. Every plate ready, except mine. My mom blinked at me like I'd surprised her by not disappearing. There's a folding chair on the back porch by the grill. You can sit there. So, I did. The air was thick and humid. The propane tank beside the grill hissed softly. I sat alone, outside, while they toasted to everything I wasn't. Here's the part they never said out loud, they liked me better when I left. They all thought I'd dropped out of North Haven Military Institute because I couldn't hack it. But that's not the truth. 7 years ago, I made a judgment call during a training op, one that pulled 3 cadets out of a live-fire zone. It saved their lives. But it made my commanding officer look sloppy. He rewrote the report. My father backed him up. He told me I lacked discipline. Said I needed to take some time to think about my future. I did, 7 years of it. You want to know what happened next? Drop a comment. Because this story? It's just getting started. I hadn't stepped foot in that house since the day I left North Haven. No birthdays. No holidays. No ceremonies. But there I was. Sitting on a metal chair next to a rusted grill. Watching my family toast to a version of success that had nothing to do with me. They thought I was working retail. Maybe bartending. Maybe still finding myself. The thing is, I had found myself. They just didn't understand the place I found it in. My phone buzzed in my jacket, no ringtone, no notification. Just a silent vibration from a device stitched into the lining. One nobody in that house would ever know to check. The screen lit up for 2 seconds, observer request. Fort Clearview Base. Passive clearance. I slipped the phone back into the lining, poured myself a glass of water, and sat quietly. The glass grew warm in my hand. But I didn't move. I stayed on that porch until the driveway cleared out, and the slideshow started looping for the 3rd time. The applause faded into gossip. The celebration dulled into noise. Nobody noticed when I slipped through the side gate and drove off. No music. Just silence. The kind of silence that's louder than anything. At home, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the floor. No lights on. No need. The apartment was white walls, no photos, nothing fragile. Clean. Sterile. In the bathroom, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, hair pulled too tight, shirt creased from the chair, expression unreadable. Not tired. Not angry. Just, there. 7 years ago, I stood in front of a mirror just like that. Same posture, same numb stare. It was my last night at North Haven. I'd packed everything I owned in a government-issued duffel. No one came to say goodbye, not even my dad, especially not him. Back then, I didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't even pack slow. I folded my uniforms like I'd been trained, stacked my field guides in alphabetical order, and slipped out of the hallway for the last time. The withdrawal form they made me sign had a blank section for reason. I asked if I could write family pressure or command retaliation. The admin officer shook her head. It's cleaner if you just check personal reasons, so I did. That's what they told people. Callie Callahan left for personal reasons. Couldn't handle the grind. Couldn't follow orders. Couldn't measure up. They never mentioned the night op. Never mentioned the 3 cadets I pulled out of a kill zone. Never mentioned that the report had been altered. My CO flagged me as insubordinate. My father, who still taught tactics at the time, read the report and told me quietly, "You embarrassed him. You embarrassed me." And then he said the line that stuck, "Maybe you're not built for command." That was the moment I knew I'd been cut loose. I didn't fight it. Didn't file an appeal. I signed the paper and walked out. No yelling. No slamming doors. Just silence. That was my protest. 3 weeks later, I got a call. No name. No greeting. Just a time, a location, and a message: bring your documents. Leave everything else. The address was in Arlington. It looked like a dusty accounting firm. Beige carpets. A broken coffee machine that probably hadn't worked since 2006. Inside sat a woman in civilian clothes who talked like a drill sergeant and smiled like a collections agent. She handed me a thick non-disclosure packet and said, "You won't be officially employed. You'll be paid. No federal database will have your name. But you'll have clearance." She said I couldn't contact family, former classmates, or colleagues. For a year. Maybe never. It was called the Orion Division, a gray zone initiative. Buried between intelligence branches. Too subtle, too sensitive for standard military channels. Not military. Not federal. Something in between. I signed, not to prove anything, because I had nowhere else to go. I changed my phone. Changed my address. Changed the way I walked into rooms. I learned how to sit still, how to scan a 10-page briefing while tying my boots. I didn't chase redemption. I just became useful, quietly. Efficiently. Without applause. And every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see failure anymore. I saw someone no one in that Denton house would know how to measure. The first 6 months with Orion were low-level. Intake. Surveillance. Testing pattern recognition. I spent more time in briefing rooms than anywhere near the field. No gadgets. No aliases. No field jackets. Just cold reports, redactions, and intel clean enough to print on glass. They called it civilian intelligence, but that was paper thin. We operated in the gray. When a base had a leak and no trail, we mapped comms. When a contractor got too cozy with a shell company, we flagged the pattern. When a civilian family stumbled too close to a black op, too many questions, too much digging, we buried the trail. I was one of the quiet ones, not a spy. Not a ghost, just a name under so many layers of clearance you'd never find me. The pay? Nothing special. The hours? Brutal. But the trade-off? Control. No commanding officer breathing down my neck. No forced marches. No posturing. Just me, data, instincts, and the silence I knew how to carry. I found a rhythm. I didn't miss the medals. Didn't miss the ceremonies. And I sure as hell didn't miss being compared to Haley. By year 3, I could hold a conversation in 5 dialects and pass a customs check in 2 more. My hair changed colors with the seasons, not to hide, just to be forgettable. I didn't use my real name on anything. Callie Callahan hadn't filed taxes since 2017. Didn't vote. Didn't show up on medical records. If you searched me, you'd find a junior lawyer in Arizona or a school librarian in Maine. The version of me that used to sit at that Denton dinner table? She didn't exist anymore. She wasn't dead. Just misfiled, and I liked it that way, until the scar. We had a low-level asset flag something strange out of San Diego. Looked like a basic phishing campaign, some junk code trying to mimic military comms. But the digital fingerprint matched an older foreign entity we'd been quietly tracking. I got looped in, nothing major. Just verification. No backup, no field team. Just me, a contact list, and a burner laptop. It was supposed to be desk work, but the data trail led to a warehouse near Otis Mesa, a contractor site with military sponsorship, so I went in. The place was clean. Too clean, waxed floors. Dense with no dust. Not even a coffee stain or a crooked chair. That meant it wasn't just operational, it had been sanitized. I was pulling a backup server bank when the air shifted. You don't hear it. You feel it. A change in pressure, in rhythm. I turned, fast, but not fast enough. He came from the blind side. No sound. No wasted motion, didn't say a word. Just used the butt of his rifle like a punctuation mark. One hit. When I came to, I was on the floor. My vision was red, my shoulder was screaming, but the drive was still clenched in my fist. I never saw his face. But I remembered the scent, copper and bleach. Someone was cleaning up. After that, I was benched, not suspended, just reassigned. Strategy division. Even ghosts can bleed. And ghosts with scars, they get promoted sideways. I didn't complain. Strategy meant fewer eyes, more control. Less field work, more analysis. I stopped chasing the adrenaline. Started building what came next. Did I miss the field? Sometimes, but more than that, I appreciated the silence. The kind where no one's measuring you, no one's watching your every move, and no one's asking if you've done enough to make your family proud, because none of it was about pride anymore, it was about doing something real. Even if no one ever knew it. They rotated me to Ridgeport for a year. There was a breach, small, internal. A contractor with 6 tax IDs, a mess of comms, and a training base that couldn't keep its files straight. I found the leak in 6 days. Flagged it, filed the report, closed the case before anyone outside even heard the name. Nobody thanked me. That's how you know it mattered. By the end of my 3rd year, I'd worked ops in 3 time zones and could spot a forged login attempt before my coffee finished brewing. I was good, but I never looked back, until one notification changed that. Fort Clearview. Observer request. Passive role. I knew the drill. No contact. No interaction. Just watch and report. Fort Clearview sat 2 hours outside Waco. Dusty, sun-scorched, with drill echoes bouncing off concrete walls. Civilian parking was half a mile out, so I walked in, under that brutal Texas sky, flashing my barcode-only badge at the perimeter gate. The guard barely glanced at me. Nodded me through. The bleachers were crowded. Family members. Junior officers. Spouses sipping coffee from metal thermoses. I took a seat on the end of the 2nd row, neutral position. Not too low to disappear. Not too high to stand out. Then I saw her, Haley, front and center. Chin up. Posture locked. Voice sharp and clear. She looked sharp. Confident. The poster version of a soldier. She didn't see me. Or she did, and pretended not to. Either one made sense. The unit was running a basic movement to contact drill. Loud, messy, and mostly for show. Nothing Orion would flag, but sloppy enough for notes. I watched her reposition a cadet's stance. Correct a grip. She was good, not perfect. But good. Then the air changed again. Sergeant Raymond Holstrom, late 50s, stone-faced, still moved like his boots weighed 100 pounds, was pacing the formation. He swept his gaze across the field, slow and surgical, then he stopped, dead center. Eyes locked on me. He didn't blink, didn't breathe, just changed direction and came straight for the bleachers. A ripple went through the unit. Instructors paused. Cadets turned their heads. When he reached me, he stopped 5 feet out, snapped to attention, right arm up. General Callahan, ma'am. I wasn't informed you'd be observing today. You could hear someone drop a water bottle 2 rows back. I looked up, steady, at ease. Sergeant. I'm off duty. Carry on. And keep it quiet. Yes, ma'am. He didn't look confused, just focused. Like this was exactly how it was supposed to happen, even if nobody told him why. He turned on his heel and marched back. Behind him, Haley dropped her training rifle. It clattered on the concrete, her face went blank. She didn't look at me, but everyone else did. That's how it works in places like that. Rank makes noise, even when you whisper. I waited 10 more minutes, didn't rush, didn't look back, walked the long way out, past the obstacle course, past the barracks, until I reached the south gate. The air behind me buzzed like it had just changed direction. I didn't check social media. I knew better, but I did check the internal relay boards at Fort Clearview. 6 hours later, there was a 300% spike in off-record pings. Chatter between cadets, instructors, even a few junior officers. Searches for Callahan. Civilian observer. General. Ma'am, 2 officers posted on the training forum. Who was she? Why did Holstrom break protocol? Nobody had answers. That was good. It meant the rumors were still just smoke, but smoke travels. I scanned the gate logs again. Haley had already submitted a request to review visitor access from the last 48 hours. That meant she knew, or she suspected. Either way, Orion's clearance override blocked her request before it even reached the front desk. That night, I didn't sleep, not out of fear, but because, for the first time in years, I didn't know what Haley would do. We hadn't spoken in person in nearly a decade. Texted maybe twice. Holiday check-ins. Once she sent a card after Mom's surgery. It was blank inside. We weren't sisters in the way people mean when they say it, but I knew her jaw. Her posture, the way her eyes shift when she's about to push. She had that look on the field, and when Haley starts asking questions, she doesn't stop. The next day, Orion sent me a single-line directive: maintain passive mode. Monitor potential exposure vector. Translation: don't cause a scene, but stay sharp. Fort Clearview didn't go into lockdown, but the rhythm changed. Schedule shuffled. An instructor reassigned. 2 cadets moved into a different unit. Just enough to say someone wanted the dust to settle. I waited, ate cold leftovers, cleaned my weapon, just because, went on a run in the dark. Read an old report on data leaks in procurement, but something didn't sit right. Not at the base, at home, with her. The last time Haley looked at me like that, she was 10 years old. I was 12. I had just punched a neighbor kid for calling her a mistake. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. When she finally did, she said, "You didn't have to do that." I could have handled it. Now I wondered if she was thinking the same thing, if she thought I stole her moment, or worse, if she was wondering what else I'd stolen. Not medals, not rank, truth. I shut down my work terminal, then pulled a binder from the bottom drawer. Looked like any other leadership training manual, frayed edges, dull blue cover. Half the pages were blank. The other half? Orion-coded briefings disguised as coaching templates. That binder had been in Haley's apartment for a year. I gave it to her after her officer training graduation. Told her it might help her tighten her command instincts. She barely flipped it open, or so I thought. See, stitched into the back pocket of that binder was a brushed steel insert. Looked like a reinforcement plate. In reality, it was a cold-linked data wafer, connected to a zero-access Orion node. The trigger wasn't opening the binder, it was using a device that wasn't authorized. At exactly 4:16 hours, an untagged tablet pinged the wafer. 7 seconds of activity, then silence. I didn't need to check timestamps. The alert came straight to me, no sirens. Just a quiet vibration and a chill I hadn't felt in years. That wafer? Only 2 physical copies existed. One was still in my locked drawer, the other? Haley had just touched. If she'd accessed it, she'd know something wasn't right. What she wouldn't know was what the wafer really connected to. It wasn't a resume, it was a dead drop protocol, part of Orion's passive alert network. It only activated if someone used a false flag login. And this one had a name embedded in the metadata: Frank Callahan, ID 442, my father's training clearance, old. Dormant, supposedly deactivated. I stared at the data line until my eyes blurred. Then dumped the encrypted string into a clean analysis slate. The logs didn't lie. Someone using my dad's old credentials accessed and edited a training report, 7 years ago. The same week I got pulled from North Haven, same day he told me, maybe you're not built for command. The modification was subtle, 3 added lines. Just enough to shift the blame from a command oversight to a cadet's disobedience. That cadet, me. The commanding officer's name had been redacted, but the original report, my report, still existed, tucked away in Orion's archive, flagged as a classified anomaly under deviated training record. No action taken, until now. I never knew who'd altered it, now I did, not a stranger, not a spy, my father. I didn't stand. Didn't yell, just breathed, then walked to the sink, drank a full glass of water like I'd come in from a desert, and opened a blank ops file. I titled it, Echo Rift, every document. Every digital footprint. Every decision that collapsed my career was tied to that altered report. This wasn't for revenge, it wasn't even for closure, it was for clarity. I didn't know yet if Haley had seen the Orion logo, but even the interface would have triggered alarm bells. And if she dug any deeper, she'd already know where that binder came from, she'd know where to look. At 2:43 a.m., I got another ping, high priority alert, no sound, just a blinking icon on my command suite. Protocol Epsilon. Node breach. Origin, Fort Clearview. I confirmed the signal. Traced it, the trigger was tied to her tablet, pinging the encrypted wafer. It wasn't deep. Just a metadata scrape, but it was enough to wake something old. Epsilon wasn't a standard security trigger. It was reserved for one type of threat, internal compromise using legacy access. I flagged it. Forwarded it to Orion's oversight team. They responded in under a minute, trace directive approved. Silent monitor. No incident file, translation, no report, no red flags, but we're watching. Everyone is. I pulled the logs myself. Cleaned the shell, and there, buried beneath the last ping, was a second signature, not Haley's, Curtis Vaughn, the software architect who helped build Orion's earliest simulation systems. Brilliant. Paranoid. Fired years ago for installing watchdog protocols into programs that weren't his to touch. He didn't fight it. He just disappeared, but apparently, he'd left a door behind. The ghost node was his, buried in an archive folder labeled admin_sim_legacy_warden. Nobody had accessed it in 6 years, until Haley did. The moment she triggered that wafer, the node woke up and forwarded the metadata to an offsite location, external. Private. This meant somebody else, outside the system, knew Haley had accessed something she shouldn't. And worse, they had tracking tools. I decrypted the outbound tags. They weren't foreign, they were familiar, sloppy, even. Curtis Vaughn had left his formatting signature, which meant the real question wasn't who broke in. It was, who was he waiting for? And the answer was now standing on a training field in Fort Clearview, carrying my last name. I shut the terminal, locked the room, and called in a transport under a name nobody had used in 5 years. The transport was black. Unmarked, the driver didn't ask questions. They never did. I sat in the back. No chatter. No eye contact. Just watching Fort Clearview shrink in the side mirror until it disappeared behind the haze of scrubland. When we pulled into the civilian lot, Haley was already waiting, boots laced tight. Windbreaker zipped. Arms crossed. No uniform, she hadn't been told I was coming, she just knew. She didn't say hi. Didn't smile. Just looked at me like she was seeing someone she didn't know existed. I need to know what's going on, she said, flat. I stepped closer. Not here. We walked the perimeter until we found a maintenance shed tucked between 2 old trailers. I unlocked it with my access card. Inside, it smelled like dust and motor oil. She stepped in. Shut the door behind us. You gave me that binder, she said, staring. I hoped you'd open it, I replied. You planted something. I nodded. I left a door. You stepped through it. She looked tired, but not weak. Just done with shadows. What the hell was on the other side? I pulled out my field slate and keyed in the access log. The screen lit up, showing one name, Frank Callahan, 442. She stared at it. Her voice barely a whisper. What is that? Dad's old clearance ID, I said. Used to modify a training report. 7 years ago. She took a step back. Hands on her hips. Shook her head like the words weren't registering. That's not possible. It is. He wouldn't, he did. She looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under her. Then, softly, why? Because a training op went sideways. A cadet disobeyed protocol. Pulled 3 others out of a live zone. The commanding officer looked sloppy. The report made it clear. So Dad rewrote it. Her voice cracked. You were the cadet. I nodded. She turned away. Her breath shortened. Shoulders rigid. He always said you cracked, she whispered. That you just weren't cut out for the grind. He needed me to look weak, I said. So his version made sense. She faced me again. Hurt in her eyes now. You kept that to yourself? What would have been the point? You let everyone think you failed. They were going to think that anyway. I just stopped correcting them. Silence. She leaned back against the wall. Pressed her palms against her thighs. I thought you didn't care, she said quietly. I thought you just walked away. I did, I said. But not because I couldn't handle it. Her eyes locked on mine, and for the first time in years, the shield dropped. All those years, she said, he used you like a warning. Every time I messed up, he'd say, don't pull a Callie. I gave a half smile. At least I was useful for something. She didn't laugh. Didn't even blink, just stared at the floor. I wanted to be like him, she said. That was the plan. My whole life. I know. She stood up straighter, squared her shoulders. Her voice shifted, clearer, steadier. What do we do next? That was the first time she said we. I handed her the slate, watched her fingers tighten around it like it weighed more than it should. She didn't speak, just stared at the screen, at the timecode, the clearance ID, the altered signature. No commentary, just the slow, mechanical breathing of someone remapping their whole history. It's real, I said. She nodded once. I know. We stood in that maintenance shed while the base outside moved like clockwork, training schedules, drills, formations. But inside? Everything had stopped. That's why he pushed you out, she said. Not because you broke, but because you made him look bad. Worse, I said. I made someone above him look bad. He just cleaned it up. She pressed her lips into a line. He said you weren't built for leadership. Maybe he was right, I said. I just ended up leading something he wasn't allowed to see. Her gaze dropped again to the tablet. He used to say your dropout changed him, she said. Made him tougher on standards. Sounds inspiring. She almost smiled, almost, then she closed the slate. Stepped back. Ran both hands down her face. What happens now? She asked. I slipped the tablet into my jacket. Depends on what you want to happen. She gave me a look like I'd just handed her a knife and told her to pick the target. I want to talk to him, she said. You can, I said. But he'll lie. I know. He's good at it. I know that too. I studied her. Her face was calm. Shoulders still. But her fingers twitched just slightly, not fear, restraint. Then go clean, I said. She blinked. What does that mean? Go in with no accusation. No file. Just the question. And if he dodges? He will. Then what? Then you'll know exactly who he is. She stood there another second, then turned, opened the shed door, walked out without looking back. I stayed behind. Breathing. She didn't need me to hold her hand, never had. She just needed the lie to be gone. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed, an encrypted voicemail. It was Haley. She didn't speak right away. Just the sound of her settling into a seat. A breath. Maybe her car, then she said. He didn't deny it. Silence. He said it was a necessary correction, for the good of the program. His words. Another pause, then her voice cracked, just once. He never said your name. I deleted the message, not because I didn't want to hear it again, but because I already had. That night, she showed up at my door, didn't knock, just the sound of her keycard scraping the lock. Her eyes were dry. Her jaw was set. I handed her coffee. She didn't drink it. I thought I understood what this uniform meant, she said, quietly. It's just a coat, I said. The person inside it matters more. She looked at me. Do you still believe in what you do? Not for them, I said. But yeah. I do. She nodded, barely, then walked to the window, not crying. Not collapsing, just standing like someone who'd finally heard the truth echo all the way back. She set the coffee down. Looked at me again. We're sending it in, she said. All of it. You sure? I asked. If he wants to believe his legacy matters more than people, then let him explain it to people. She wasn't angry, she was done being angry. That's a different temperature entirely. We submitted the report through a closed Orion intake node. Not standard channels. No paper trail for her, just for me. Haley signed as co-author. Listed her rank, division, and her relationship to the subject, daughter. Would have been cleaner if I filed it solo, but she refused. If this burns, she said, we burn together. She wasn't being dramatic, just stating fact. The response came fast. Federal Security Review Council. Closed protocol, 2 days. DC Satellite Station. Both parties required. They called it a procedural integrity audit. Which is military speak for, we don't like this. But we can't ignore it. We flew in under Orion authority. Haley wore civilian clothes. No rank. No insignia. How's that feel? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Honest. The building was cold. Metal chairs. Bright lights. Air that made you forget how to breathe. 3 officers behind a desk. No names. Just clearance levels. I submitted everything, the original report, the tampered version, the timeline, the triggered node. The oldest officer looked up first. Colonel Callahan's digital signature. How do you confirm it? Credential chain match, I said. Timestamp lines up. We also have the original report for comparison. They didn't argue, didn't nod either. Then one turned to Haley. You understand what this could cost your father? She didn't blink. I understand what it already cost my sister. The room didn't get louder, just heavier. By the end, they didn't issue a ruling, just a directive, internal audit. 72 hours. Parties advised to remain off base and off record. When we stepped outside, she didn't speak for a full block. Then she said, if they clear your record. What changes? Probably nothing. You'd still do it again? I looked at her. You wouldn't? She didn't answer, but I could see it in her eyes. She already had. The next morning, they called us back. Same room, only this time, 5 officers sat behind the desk. 2 wore Orion pins. The rest carried that unmistakable posture of federal oversight. My father entered from the far door, pressed collar. Clean shave. No expression. He nodded at Haley, didn't even glance at me. Colonel Callahan, one officer said. You're here in response to evidence of an altered training report, bearing your credential ID. Yes, my father said. Calm. No hesitation. Were you ordered to modify it? No, sir. It was my judgment. The woman at the table leaned forward. By judgment, you mean misrepresenting a cadet's actions to preserve command image? I mean correcting a narrative that undermined the integrity of leadership. Haley stood. She wasn't asked to. I was raised under that narrative, she said. It was a lie. I read both reports. I saw the access logs. There's no confusion about what happened. And there's no confusion about what he did. My father didn't interrupt, didn't even react. The lead officer turned. Do you object to reinstating the original field report? My father sat back. No, just like that, no apology, no resistance. I spoke once. Just once. She didn't ruin your reputation. You did. He said nothing. They motioned for a recess. When they came back, the decision was read aloud, effective immediately. Colonel Frank Callahan is relieved of all remaining advisory duties. He will be transitioned into retirement without distinction. Officer Callie Callahan's record will be amended to reflect original field service. All annotations cleared, this case will remain sealed. No public record. No further action, that was it, no medals, no spotlight, just facts. Quiet. Flat, outside, the sun was dropping behind the fence, government gray. We walked together in silence. He really believes he did the right thing, Haley said. Yeah, I replied. That's what makes him dangerous. She didn't cry. Didn't even pause. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her rank pin, and held it in her palm, then handed it to me. I don't want it right now. I closed my hand around it, didn't argue, didn't tell her she'd earned it, she already knew. We kept walking, through the gate. Past the transport shuttles. At one point she said, I asked to be reassigned. Off base. Logistics. I didn't respond, she added, they didn't fight it. Didn't ask why. I nodded. They already knew. When we reached the off-base lot, she sat on the bench near the memorial wall. He didn't even flinch, she said. Not when they read the findings. Not even when you spoke. That's how he's always been, I said. Stillness mistaken for strength. She looked at her boots. I trained my whole life to be like him. You were, I said. You just didn't realize he wasn't it. She held the pin again. This meant everything to me. No, I said. It meant everything to who you thought you had to be. She handed it back. I don't want it to mean rank. I want it to mean I saw what needed fixing, and I didn't look away. She smiled. Not big. Not proud, just enough. 2 days later, she showed up at Orion, no uniform, just a gray coat. Badge clipped to the inside. She didn't knock on my door, just bought coffee across the street and waited. I'm not ready to forgive him, she said. You don't have to. She stirred her cup without drinking. He told me duty meant never hesitating. I nodded at her bag. Then maybe this is the first time you've actually honored it. Before she left, she opened her coat, just enough to show the badge inside the lining, not for display, for herself. See you inside, she said, and she meant it. Not all victories are loud. Sometimes, truth doesn't come with a spotlight, just silence that finally makes sense. Sometimes, leadership isn't about being seen, it's about doing what's right, even when no one claps. Even when the people you hoped would see it never will, because real integrity doesn't need to be saluted, it just needs to stand. Let me know if you'd like a full video title, description, or SEO-friendly hashtags. Below is your final image prompt for this story.